Hello, and welcome back to Pathfinder. My name is Philip, and I'm here to talk about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. This is part of a series I am producing covering the various deities in the Pathfinder role-playing game and its setting, the world of Golarion. Last time, I kicked off Dwarf Month with my coverage of the dwarven god of death, Magrim, the eldest deity in the dwarven pantheon. Despite the decidedly neutral stance he takes regarding his fellow deities and their conflicts, Magrim is generally well respected and well liked by his fellow deities and by the dwarves of Avestan. The subject of today's video is neither morally neutral nor well liked or respected. Droskar is the only villain in the dwarven pantheon and revels in his role as the god of toil and exploitation. Before that, though, if you enjoy this video and want to hear more Pathfinder lore, consider subscribing or commenting below. With that out of the way, let's move on to the rundown. Droskar has two notable monikers among the dwarves of Golarion, neither of which are glowing with positivity: the Dark Smith and the Master of the Dark Furnace. He is the only member of the dwarven pantheon who is not related to Torag by blood or marriage. In addition to his villainous position in the dwarven pantheon, Droskar serves as the patron deity of the Hringar, Paizo's new interpretation of the duergar in the post-remaster era. Droskar has interest in the exploitation of labor, and specifically the exploitation of the labor of the weak by the powerful. He sees hierarchical relationships as the natural order, with those at the top entirely deserving of the benefits they reap from the labor of those at the bottom. Droskar's status as a villain among the dwarves means that while he is recognized among them, they rarely hold him in high regard, or worship him to the exclusion of other deities. His faith is centered in the Darklands among the Hringar. Outside of his formal clergy, Droskar is typically worshipped by business moguls, slavers, or warlords. Droskar typically appears as a dwarf of impressive proportions. He towers over those to whom he presents himself, and his arms, chest, and shoulders are all broad and heavily muscled. His hair and beard manifest as flowing black smoke, while his skin is the color of lifeless gray ash. Burn marks cover his skin and form patterns evocative of flames progressing along his forearms. He wears workman's clothing, but his smithing apron is made from the scaled pelt of an enormous red dragon, which Droskar killed in an age long forgotten. He is typically depicted with his forge hammer, Karandosh, though he is sometimes also depicted as wielding a powerful artifact called the Soul Chain. The Soul Chain appears as a mass of black chains wrapped around Droskar's forearm, with the links which hang down slowly fading into rippling smoke. The artifact has the ability to reach out into any of the major planes of the Great Beyond and grasp any soul Droskar wishes, allowing him to yank them through the multiverse and force them to stand before him. It is possible, however, that this power is limited to his faithful, or is less effective on those who oppose him. That is unclear. Though he once dwelt in heaven with the other members of the dwarven pantheon, Droskar now makes his home in the Outer Rifts. His divine realm is called the Ashen Forge, and takes the form of a mess of tunnels, mines, and forages in which Droskar forces his divine servants to toil for eternity. The realm is constantly being torn down by the chaotic energy of the Outer Rifts themselves, and would vanish entirely were it not for the forced reconstruction at the hands of Droskar's legions. Droskar himself can be found in his spherical workshop, the Dark Furnace, seated upon his forged throne. The throne itself is crafted from the souls of those servants who have displeased the Dark Smith, and is suspended in the air by a network of heavy iron chains. Devout followers of Droskar, alternately called either Droskarans or Droskari, are generally results-oriented. They are generally hard-working, driven, and methodical. Droskari often set firm goals for themselves, then do whatever it takes to accomplish those goals. What they are not is ethical. For the Droskari, the ends justify the means in basically any circumstance. Exploitation of others is par for the course in Droskar's teachings, and the only law that matters is the law that the strong dominate the weak. Things like honor, honesty, and gratitude to any beyond Droskar himself are rare among the Darksmith's followers. For all their zeal and hard work, they are disloyal, backstabbing people, always seeking the opportunity to gain advantage over others. These beliefs and behaviors are easily explained when examining Droskar's doctrine and holy text. His holy text, the Book of Chains, is only 12 pages long, and is a transcription of a speech by the first prominent Droskari priest among the Hringar, Gernet Lorsong. This speech was divinely inspired, with Gernet having been filled by the wisdom of Droskar prior to and during his oration. The text describes the virtues of toil and labor under a strict hierarchy, and the supremacy of Droskar. It is worth noting that Gernet was transmuted into ash upon the completion of this speech, earning his posthumous moniker of the Ashen Prophet. The philosophy espoused by Droskar is one of tyranny, though not one of blind obedience. As Droskar sees it, those with the power to enslave or exploit others, to take the spoils of lesser beings' work for themselves, have the right to do so. The willingness and ability to enact violence is the ultimate authority in the universe, and those most capable of violence are the ones most deserving of authority. In such a system, the efforts of the weak exist only to benefit the strong, and those at the top of the hierarchy can lay claim to the accomplishments of those at the bottom. This is the key difference between Droskar and his former master, Torag. The Forge Father and the Dark Smith both teach the importance of industriousness, but Torag believes that only someone's individual works can speak for their value as a craftsman. Droskar spits in the face of this philosophy. If he is powerful enough to command the work of others, why should he not reap the benefits of their labor and receive praise for it? Does Torag himself not command legions of divine servitors to enact his will? Does he not equip the armies of heaven to fight battles on his behalf? Is Torag's own forge not worked by many who serve in his name? Droskar simply discards what he sees as a facade, claiming the work of those beneath him as his own. In his eyes, he works just as hard as the other dwarven gods. Some of his effort just goes toward enslavement rather than direct creation. And work hard Droskar does. His faith specifically condemns lazy and indolent tyrants. To benefit from the work of those beneath you is right and proper, but to use this position to become slothful is nothing short of sacrilegious. Hard work is both the means and the end for a devout Droskari, and to shirk one's labors is to go against the Darksmith's teachings. Droskar himself might be a tyrannical slaver, but no one could ever call him lazy. Temples to Droskar exemplify his emphasis on hard work and craftsmanship, as professed by his priests. 1 part grand cathedral and 1 part oppressive factory, Droskaran temples are often marvels of engineering and construction, with imposing columns, towering ceilings, and forges so productive they could compete with even the largest Toragdan churches. In the constant attempt to build upon or surpass the work of their forebears, devout Droskari are constantly expanding, remodeling, or entirely reconstructing these holy workhouses, expanding them to ever greater heights and levels of grandeur. Temples are most common in the Darklands, where Droskar's faith is practiced openly. On the surface, where faith in the Master of the Dark Furnace must often be kept secret, shrines can take the form of Droskar's holy symbol on the underside of a smith's anvil, or hidden elsewhere in a laborer's equipment or around their workstation. This allows the worshipper to practice their faith in secret and to perform their day-to-day work in Droskar's unholy name. The faith of Droskar is most commonly practiced in the Darklands, due to his status as the patron deity of the Hringar. The Hringar, or Grey Dwarves, are most prominent in Narvoth, the uppermost layer of the Darklands. This region represents the territory the dwarves, and consequently the orcs, abandoned during the quest for Sky. Centers of Droskari faith in Narvoth include the Hringar cities of Felsrok and Deepkamer, and the capital of Hagegraf is known to contain a strange clock called the Horologe, which is claimed to measure the output of Droskar's own ashen forge. On the surface, Droskar's faith is actively hunted by most of dwarven society, forcing it to exist in secret, or on the edges of civilization, where martial might can ensure the security of the faith. Several strongholds of the faith can be found in Belkzen, where tyranny and slavery can still be found with relative ease, despite the recent efforts of Ardak's Whitehair. Additionally, small holdouts of faithful Droskari eke out a meager existence in the Sodden lands in northern Garund. Droskar was once the greatest and most skilled of Torag's apprentices. The Forgefather had many apprentices once he established his divine realm in heaven, and Droskar was quickly recognized for the quality of his work. This skill was a facade, however, as Droskar had kidnapped and enslaved another apprentice in secret, and was passing off this apprentice's work as his own. This deception would not last. Torag discovered Droskar's treachery, and responded in a manner befitting his stern and unforgiving nature. He cast Droskar out of the dwarven pantheon, and exiled him from heaven. The Forgefather also placed a curse upon his former apprentice, sealing away Droskar's artistic inspiration, and preventing him from ever creating anything new or novel again. From here on, Droskar would only ever be able to copy the work of other, better craftsmen. While this punishment was severe, Droskar saw fit to inflict one last punishment upon his former master. Before he fled from heaven, Droskar murdered the apprentice he had enslaved, ensuring that this apprentice would never be able to join Torag and take Droskar's place. After his banishment, Droskar wandered the great beyond, searching for petitioners to establish a faith of his own. He saw religion as entirely transactional in nature, and an opportunity to acquire more servants to exploit. He offered divine power to the desperate in exchange for eternal toil, a deal which many petitioners accepted out of short-sighted need. After the Earthfall impact, Droskar discovered a new source of followers. As mentioned in my Torag video, the dwarves of Golarion began their existence as a subterranean people. They interpreted the quakes caused by Earthfall as the promised sign of their quest for sky, in which they would follow Torag's command to quest upwards to the surface world. The majority of the dwarves made their way to the surface world under the leadership of the mighty Targic, but not all of them made the ascent. A small fraction of the dwarves remained underground, unconvinced that the time for the quest for sky was upon them. These dwarves soon found themselves cut off from the rest of dwarven society, and abandoned by their priests and gods. Trapped in the hostile Darklands with threats both new and old, they were quickly overwhelmed. They cried out for a god who would answer their plight, and Droskar, seeing an opportunity, answered. Droskar provided these dwarves with divine power, though in exchange he demanded that he be named the patron deity of their whole society. Desperate for some form of support, these dwarves accepted the deal, taking up the faith of Droskar and carving out a place for themselves in the Darklands. Over the following millennia, these dwarves slowly adapted further to life in the Darklands and the blessings granted by Droskar. Their skin faded to an ashen gray, much like Droskar's own, and their hair slowly faded to bone white. Their vision, already adapted to life underground, specialized even further, resulting in their ancestral affliction with light blindness. Over the centuries, Droskar's patronage infused the dwarves, now called the Hringar, with the ability to cast occult spells, most notably the spell Blood Vendetta. For centuries, the Hringar battled for their right to exist in the Darklands. Finally, 1,500 years after the ascension of Eredin, a great Hringar war leader rose up. General Gromdaer Akrezoth led the Hringar in a massive assault on the former dwarven city of Hagegraf, and succeeded in retaking it from the ghouls and Morlocks who had dwelled there. Upon seizing the city, Gromdaer declared himself king and dedicated the city to Droskar. In the centuries since, Hagegraf has become the capital city of the Hringar nation, and the center of Droskar's faith on Golarion. Droskar is, unsurprisingly, on bad terms with the other deities in the dwarven pantheon. Most of them treat him with hostility, and even those that don't simply see him as beneath them. The exceptions to this are Grudenar and Drangvit. Grundenar, the second son of Torag, is the peacekeeper in the family, and is actively seeking to reconcile Droskar and Torag so the Darksmith might redeem himself and rejoin his former master in heaven. Drangvit, as the dwarven goddess of vengeance, understands the darker nature of the mortal heart, and feels some sympathy for Droskar, though this has never manifested as an alliance, and likely won't anytime soon. Because of the enmity between Droskar and the rest of the dwarven pantheon, most dwarves in Avestan see him as an enemy, and treat his followers with outright hostility. Droskar also gets along poorly with Asmodeus and the forces of Hell. While the Dark Smith and the Prince of Lies share an interest in tyranny and exploitation, their common ground ends there. Droskar teaches that the only meaningful authority is power, and all other authority, like laws, are meaningless. This is strictly opposed to Asmodeus's emphasis on the importance of laws and contracts. For this reason, the duergar slavers of the Darklands have never had much success penetrating Chelish society, or gaining a foothold politically in the region. Personally, I don't see much of a difference between their philosophies, since Asmodeus's view can only be maintained or enforced through the use of overwhelming force, just like Droskar's. His contracts are all well and good, but they only work because they are infused with powerful magic, which can literally wrest the souls of the signatories from their bodies if they break their oaths. While not strictly speaking a religion, the prophecies of Calistrade in Druma teach lessons very much in line with Droskar's beliefs. The prophecies of Calistrade, for those unfamiliar, are a set of secular prophecies recorded from the dreams of the mystic Calistrade thousands of years ago. The prophecies developed over the centuries into something of a cult, which then grew in influence until the nation of Druma was established in 2331 AR with the Calistocracy of Druma. From then on, Callistocrats and their profit-driven philosophy ruled Druma without question. Callistocrats believe the accumulation of wealth is the secret to a meaningful life. While they accept the authority of laws, they only do so because lawful society creates fertile ground for profitable business. Callistocrats see no issue with the exploitation of others, and, in fact, see it as the key to accumulating a large fortune. Droskar's faith is generally accepted in Druma, as his teachings of hierarchy and exploitation share much in common with the prophecies. That's weird. A hyper-capitalist society founded on the profit motive being okay with a god of exploitation and slavery? I can't imagine why that is. For players who might be interested in playing characters who follow Droskar, here are a few useful details. For those using the alignment rules, Droskar is a neutral evil deity, and will accept clerics of any evil alignment. His edicts are to achieve goals at any cost, to continually improve your abilities, to establish dominance, and to work ceaselessly. Conversely, to fail to work toward goals, to fail to improve your skill, or to relax excessively or give in to sloth are all anathema to Droskar. His holy symbol is a burning flame beneath a stone arch. His domains are duty, earth, trickery, and tyranny, though he also has the alternate domains of ambition and fire. Droskar's sacred colors are gray and orange, intended to evoke thoughts of fire and ash. Followers often dress in plain, practical work clothes. Smith's aprons are common, as are tool belts, heavy gloves, and other tools of the follower's particular trade. In battle, many followers will tend toward dark clothing to help blend into the subterranean places they normally fight. They often display their holy symbol prominently, and sometimes have it worked into their armor. Much like with followers of Torag or Magrim, metal armor is common among Droskari, though chainmail seems to be more common among the Hringar than suits of plate. Priests might tend toward gray robes with orange accents, which glow like fire when empowered with magic. The Darksmith's sacred weapon is the Lighthammer, and for those keeping track, that makes 3 dwarven deities in a row whose favored weapon is in the hammer group. That said, some followers of Droskar might choose to emulate his use of the soul chain by using spiked chains or weapons in the flail group. These weapons also have a thematic connection to slavery, and might include the meteor hammer, the scorpion whip, or the duergar. Droskar's favored animal is the beetle, though I haven't found a particular myth or legend explaining why that is the case. Subterranean animals are likely found among his followers, especially those with dark vision or similar abilities which allow them to navigate in dark or dim light. Notably, the Hringar of the Darklands make use of giant beetles as mounts. The Church of the Master of the Dark Furnace is a strictly hierarchical organization. It seems to be mostly staffed by clerics, though the emphasis on power likely means that any character build with sufficient strength might rise to prominence. Due to the emphasis on physical labor, war priests are likely more common than cloistered clerics, but that's just speculation on my part. Champions are certainly common as well, as the church is known to have a military wing. The emphasis on hard work and constant effort within the Droskari Church likely appeals to classes who thematically dedicate themselves to constant study, practice, or craftsmanship. Inventors, alchemists, or gunslingers who craft their own ammo might play onto this theme, as might fighters, monks, wizards, or maguses. Magi? Maguses. Kineticists with a connection to fire, earth, or metal would also be a good choice. Droskar's faith, as mentioned earlier, is most heavily represented among the Hringar, formerly the duergar, of the Darklands. While not all Hringar worship him, many do, and surface dwellers often mistakenly believe that Droskari faith is a universal religion among the Hringar. Dwarves have the next greatest level of exposure to Droskar's faith, though the vast majority of them see the Darksmith as opposed to their more benevolent gods, and thus treat him with disdain. Still, the occasional dwarf can be found among his faithful. Beyond that, creatures from the Darklands, like cavern elves, might have some exposure to his faith, and Droskar would never turn away a useful servant. Elemental scions connected to fire, metal, or earth might all be born in communities where Droskar's faith is prominent. For GMs looking to integrate Droskar and his followers into a campaign, here are some ideas. Unfortunately, I haven't found any information on Droskar's herald or divine servitors. On Golarion, he might be most directly served by the Forge Spurned, a subspecies of undead created by the Darksmith himself. A Forge Spurned is created when a follower of Droskar fails to live up to the standards of their god in life. Rather than allowing them to be judged and potentially infect his deific realm in the afterlife, the Master of the Dark Furnace curses them with unlife. Forge Spurned take on the appearance of dwarves, or Hringar, bound in endless chains with beards or hair made of smoke and fire. If you want to make use of the Hringar in your campaign, it's worth noting that the lore surrounding them has recently seen some significant updates. The OGL debacle in 2023 prompted Paizo to change the name of the duergar to the Hringar. The need to further differentiate their IP, plus Paizo's recent attempts to move away from depictions of chattel slavery, led to additional changes. Back in 1E, the duergar were slavers, and slavery formed the basis of their civilization. The Hringar, by contrast, form their society around formal networks of exploitation specifically designed after multi-level marketing schemes. All members of Hringar society have uplines of people for whom they work, and downlines of people who work for them. At the top of the society are the Taskmasters, the priests of Droskar who only answer to the Chainwrights, the council of 7 priests who act as the voices of the Darksmith on Golarion. Thinking very high level, the biggest plot hook I can think of regarding Droskar and his past is the apprentice he imprisoned and later killed during his time as Torag's favorite apprentice. Very little is known about this apprentice, and the fate of their soul upon their death is unclear. The apprentice might have been a celestial native to heaven, or might have been a lesser deity who might have ascended to take Droskar's place. A high-level party of PCs might unearth some strange artifact or ritual which summons the spirit of this deceased apprentice, who has been transformed into a vengeful ghost. The PCs might then need to take action against the Church of Droskar, or venture into the Great Beyond to recover some additional artifact which Droskar stole from this apprentice in life. This might even result in the addition of a new undead god to the dwarven pantheon. The epic scale of this story lends itself nicely to a mythic campaign, so you might want to wait for the eventual publication of the 2e mythic rules before running a story like this. On the smaller end of the narrative scale, a GM might create a plot for a party of Droskari PCs surrounding the expansion of their subterranean superhighway, the Long Walk. The Long Walk is a cavernous tunnel which connects the dwarven cities of Hagegraf beneath Highhelm and Fellstroke beneath Urgir. The highway is the largest trade network in Narvoth and is patrolled and zealously protected by the Hringar. The Hringar city of Deepkamer is the next largest beneath Avestan and is notably not connected to the other two cities by the Long Walk. An expansion of the highway to Deepkamer would serve to further unify the Hringar and would strengthen their economy. Notably, the biggest threats to this project might have been the Drow in Kimlin Brew and Korgunbir, but with the elimination of Drow from the Paizo canon, GMs have an opportunity to create entirely new threats for the Droskari PCs to fight. So, that's it. That's Droskar, the Dark Smith, villain of the dwarven pantheon and patron deity of the Hringar. I find him to be incredibly unsympathetic, but I also love what Paizo has done with the Hringar. I'm so excited to completely derail Sky King's tomb when I finally get a chance to run it by adding 100 little side quests in and around Hagegraf. And I appreciate that the dwarves have an antagonistic deity all their own, as it really makes their culture feel like it once existed entirely separate from the surface world. In the next episode, I will be concluding Dwarf Month with an exploration of another aspect of dwarven culture which adds to its depth and richness in a big way. The Rivethun are a sect of spiritualists among the dwarves of Avestan who seek to connect to the spirits of dwarves long gone and to solve the mysteries of dwarven history long forgotten. They are very cool and, in my mind, don't get nearly enough attention. So, up next is the second ever episode of Pathfinder Factions, all about the Rivethun. See you next time.